This is Jim Milton from the student career site Portfolium, and I'm next on the RecTech podcast.
All right, welcome to the RecTech podcast, the recruiting technology show. I'm your host, Chris Russell. I'm a consultant who helps job boards, HR tech vendors with strategy, marketing, and product development. So the goal of the show is to highlight interesting recruiting technologies, as well as talking with other recruiters on how they use technology to recruit. And today we're going to focus on the vendor side. But first, the RecTech podcast is sponsored by Jobs to Careers. Jobs to Careers is the leading programmatic marketplace to find talent. Using predictive analytics, the company enables recruiters to estimate the cost and applicant volume they can expect and only pay for completed applications. Jobs to Careers' mission is to innovate the way talent effectively finds work and work finds talent. For more info, go to jobstocareers.com/employers. All right, Jim Milton is the VP of Customer Development at San Diego-based Portfolium, a site that allows students to showcase themselves to potential employers. Jim, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Chris, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so tell us first, what is the mission of Portfolium and why should employers use it?
Portfolium's mission is to transform learning into opportunity. So that means students, college students, community college students, graduate students have a whole lot of knowledge that they've learned, but they've traditionally had limited opportunity to express that in an efficient way to employers. So employers can use Portfolium to get right into the heads of the top students and new grads and kind of crumble up the resume, throw the traditional resume aside, and actually see what have these students learned, what can they do, and how do we and how can we be sure they can do it on the job effectively. So that's why we exist.
Okay, and just give us a quick history of the company. When did it start? Give us some background there, if you could.
Yeah, so Portfolium founded like a lot of cool startups, founded in the dorm room of a college by an aspiring entrepreneur. In our case, it was founded by Adam Markowitz, who was a rocket scientist who worked on the space shuttle program. So in this case, it did take a rocket scientist to start a job site.
Nice.
But yeah, Adam was an aerospace engineer. Such an impressive guy. I'll brag for him because he's not on the call, so he's a little more humble. Such an impressive guy, but Chris, you couldn't really tell from his resume what he was really capable of. And this just to give you an example, this is a guy who on the weekends for fun, while I was doing God knows what in college, he was out sending weather balloons into outer space and videotaping it, right? So,
wow.
Really impressive guy. And he thought, man, it kind of stinks that I have to take all this kind of cool stuff that I know how to do and hide it behind a resume, and then to go ahead and submit that resume through job boards and applicant tracking systems and maybe never get credit for all of my abilities.
Right.
So that was kind of his initial epiphany, like, man, the resume is killing students' chances to get a job, and it's not a recruiter's fault. There was just no alternative. So that's how the company was founded, and it's grown a lot. It grew from the idea of Adam, and he created it for himself, to about 2.8 million students and recent grads now have digital portfolios on Portfolium, so it's grown really quickly.
How much is that again? How many?
About 2.8 million students and recent grads, and so the recent grads could be people that have graduated in the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years.
Right.
One of the interesting things about Portfolium is it wasn't just that Adam had this good idea. It was at the same kind of time, a lot of colleges and universities have been getting anxious. We've all heard about, especially since the last kind of Great Recession, students have had trouble getting gainfully employed after they graduate college, and we hear about skills gaps and so forth, geographically and in certain skill areas. So colleges and universities have a vested interest, obviously, in getting their students hired after graduation. So at the same time, Adam kind of had his epiphany around, hey, let's kill the resume and do something better for students. College universities started thinking, what can we do beyond, inviting employers to the traditional college career fairs? What other investments can we make in our students to get them hired? So Portfolium, a lot of people don't know this, Chris, Portfolium is actually more of a consortium. It's about 200 colleges and universities who got together and said, let's kind of build our own LinkedIn. Like, if we can do that from scratch today, let's build our own version of LinkedIn, but let's do it with the portfolio instead of the resume, because that'll really help the students stand out. So that's kind of how all the pieces fit together.
I see. Okay. And what are some of those schools? Can you tell us a few names?
Yeah. So it's we have some of the most prestigious and Ivy League schools, the likes of Cornell and UPenn, and then we have community college systems. So we have the California Community College System, has over 100 schools. We have, in some cases, Chris, we actually have system-wide partnerships, which is a really kind of progressive thing, I think, for some of these schools to do. Sometimes what we found is a lot of colleges and universities leave technology decisions up to individual faculty or maybe the career center at a certain school. In Portfolium's case, we found some really visionary partners. So, for example, at the California State University system, the CSU system, as they call it here, there are actually 23 separate campuses. And with one agreement with their chancellor's office, we actually have a 3-year kind of exclusive partnership with all 23. And we've done similar agreements with the UC system, University of California system. Also, University System of Georgia has a system-wide agreement. So you'll see us, for companies that are hiring, we can cover hiring nationally.
Are they pushing their students towards the platform, in essence?
They are, yeah. And that's another thing that we haven't seen before, because in the past, because what we found was they would make recommendations kind of more softly, like, hey, if you're a graduating senior, you should be on LinkedIn, right? Or obviously get your resume rewritten. In this case, as part of these partnerships we have with the universities, it's a proactive push. So the universities really get involved in both digitally and many times offline will have a really sophisticated way of marketing Portfolium to the students. So it's a partnership between Portfolium and the college to onboard the student into the platform. And then we give a lot of kudos back to the students and make them feel good about using Portfolium. So students enter challenges, hackathons. And again, these are things you can't do with a resume, but a business student can upload one of their best public speaking presentations and win an award for it actually on Portfolium. And so it's been a cool thing all the way around, yeah, for the students as well as obviously the colleges and Portfolium and the employers.
So it sounds like it's even more of an interactive experience as well. Tell us about the user experience for, a student these days in terms of what they can do on the platform.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's a true social network. But since the context is learning, these students are usually our average students somewhere between their, 4-year career journey. So maybe they're a junior or senior in college, and they're still head down doing homework or class assignments or squeezing for an exam, right? So it's a little different. So we think of Facebook as like the social graph, and you're looking at, what your friends and family's pictures and newsfeed status. LinkedIn is all about where you've worked and who you know. So you're looking at kind of colleagues, updates and kind of stuff they're sharing. On Portfolium, the social network has a feed where students actually see what's going on in class. So there's you can actually check in on your fellow colleagues' class projects. So there's a competitive nature here where as a student, if I'm handing in an assignment and then my fellow student hands one in, I can see, well, what do they do and how do I make mine better, right? And so there's a social feed based on projects, and professors and faculty get involved as well to give kudos on the students' assignments. And I would say the biggest part of the experience, in addition to kind of that classic social feed, is that students tag each other in the group projects that they work on. So from a number of different angles, whether it's that group project-centric tagging, the social feed, or professors encouraging students to use it, it does become highly interactive. You'll see discourse back and forth between students and students. We have some students, Chris, let's say I'm a marketing major at Syracuse University. I can actually see some of the capstone projects or some of the exciting assignments that a marketing student's working on at Cal Poly Slow in California, and it might open up my mind. I mean, we've seen students that now are doing business plan competitions. They're taking on extracurriculars as a result of that social inspiration from other students. So, and one of the biggest advantages we've seen from an employer's perspective, because the listeners at this point may be thinking, wow, this sounds really cool for students, but how does it help me as an employer?
Right.
It actually helps in a huge way because some students change their mind about what they want to be when they grow up, right? So,
sure.
I don't know about you, but I changed my mind 1,000 times between freshman year and when I eventually graduated. So what ends up happening is that inspiration will drive students into the best fitting career path in some cases, rather than having students sign up for a career in accounting and then 3 months into it, they're like, I don't want to do this, which is obviously very bad from a turnover perspective. So that engagement, we basically, what I like to say to employers is we give students 4 years to find a really great fit at your company. And they might not have wanted to. We have students that maybe originally didn't want to take an insurance sales job, but by year 4, they got passionate about sales and passionate about communication skills and passionate about other things, and then they end up being a great fit in a job like that. So it's a really interesting, not only a community of students sharing knowledge, but then finding that inspiration, which really does pay off for the employer in terms of fit in the long run.
Okay. So, Jim, what can employers do on the site? I mean, beyond, I guess, searching for people, for students and recent grads, what else can they do? Can they post jobs? Can they, interact with students at all?
Yeah, so there's really, the mechanics are really simple, but the underlying technology is really different. So I'll speak to just the basics first. So you can post, you can search the database, and you can, I would say, engage. And by engage, I mean you can do branding, you can run contests and challenges, you can even build up a following, like a talent community of students.
Okay.
And you can build that following sooner than, senior year. So one of the huge advantages is if you're a company that doesn't have a ton of money to spend on college recruiting, or if you're a larger company that has a set of core campuses but would love to experiment on other campuses, you can now digitally, cost-effectively go out, engage students on some new campuses that you might not have reached before, and then create kind of that talent community. And again, like I'd mentioned, a traditional post and search. But the really important thing, I think if there were one thing, Chris, that I'd love your listeners to walk away with, and this is regardless of whether or not, you use Portfolium. One of the things that we're really passionate about is this movement that we're calling evidence-based hiring. So the key thing about searching on Portfolium is you're not just searching for keywords on a resume. It's not a resume database. You're actually, if you search for a keyword on Portfolium, let's say you're looking for someone with, analytical skills, Portfolium's actually going to take that search and dive into the hard, tangible proof of analytical skills. So we're going to go X-ray all the class projects, capstone projects, the weather balloon project like Adam did when he launched Portfolium, and we're going to go look for hard, tangible evidence. It could be in any format, but we have some pretty advanced technology that parses, it doesn't matter what it is, presentation, video, code samples, et cetera, and be able to say, this is a student that really has the skill. They're not just saying they do on a resume. They can actually demonstrate it. And the same goes for, Chris, if you post a job on Portfolium and you don't have time to search our database, our algorithm will take a look at your job and then, again, go try to find matching students automatically who have, once again, evidence of the skills that you listed in your job. So evidence-based hiring being, number one, hopefully just the more ethical and objective way to hire, right? Because you're looking at if somebody can do the job or not, more so than maybe other factors like their GPA or the reputation of their school or their race, gender, et cetera. So there's a real objective kind of thing here that we can help employers kind of accomplish. And then from a quality of hire standpoint, we have 85 years of combined research that shows, and we're happy to share with your listeners if they're interested, that a work sample is the best predictor of job performance. So if somebody can prove that they can do the work, they can do the job, right? And so Portfolium, obviously students more than anybody need this kind of evidence-based approach because they don't have that track record in corporate America. All they've got are their projects and their work samples. And the irony is, though, that those are actually the best, most predictive ways for students to get jobs. So I'd love to see, if anybody's interested who's listening, check this out for entry-level hiring, and it could take a lot of the risk out of hiring people with limited corporate work history. But also just think about the concept, evidence-based recruiting. I think you're going to see, Chris, your listeners are going to find out over the next 1, 2, 3 years, it's a trend that'll probably start to go deeper than just entry-level recruiting. And I'm sure we'll have lots of competitors that try to do it as well as we do.
Yeah, I mean, as a former recruiter, I can definitely see the value in that, and I do think that evidence-based projects like that are a great way to to see what the candidate is like, first of all, I remember a guy I interviewed once who first interview came in with a PowerPoint presentation ready to go, So I was like, let's get this guy on board. So good stuff. So, okay, Jim, what are some of the basic costs involved for the employers? Can you break down some of that for us?
Yeah, so the simplest way to get a taste of the platform is to post a job. We actually have a $199 30-day post, and that will do a lot of the legwork for you. When you post, we'll go find the matching candidates. We'll have them pre-screened based on the strength of their profile and the evidence they provided, and we'll drive the top matching candidates to that post. So it's a really advanced post. It's like you're getting like 50% of what a headhunter would give you, but you're getting it at like a fraction of the cost. So that's $199. And then we have subscription packages that range from anywhere from $700 to $6,000 a year. And those more resemble like the LinkedIn recruiter license, where you can go into our database and really search and set up messaging templates and build that talent community, and do all those other cool kind of things that I had mentioned earlier.
Okay. Jim, what have you learned so far about how college students look at the job search process overall? I'm also curious on what they tell you about what they think about LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of topic, so I'll take it one at a time. I think, first of all, one of the things that college students that we found is a lot of them seem to be looking for the big name companies or the trendy brands. So when we interviewed and surveyed college students, and we have our own data and our own network, obviously with 2.8 million students and a lot of trends that we can kind of track, we can see where students' interests lie. We're finding out that students are very unaware of some of the mid-market brands and smaller businesses out there because they just don't know about them.
Yeah.
So, and they don't have a sense of the reputation of maybe some of the smaller companies. So they're gravitating more toward the shiny brands, the Facebooks, the Googles, et cetera. So that's one thing, and one opportunity that we found maybe for your employer listeners to consider is, to find a lean way to do employment branding is going to be really important, because some of these students, they're not going to turn their nose up to a job, right? They want to work for your company, especially if you have growth opportunities to offer them, and they can see at least a light at the end of the tunnel. An entry-level job may have some menial tasks, but if they can see growth in their career, they're willing to put in the grunt work. But it's hard to get a student to apply to your job on Indeed or Monster or Simply Hired or LinkedIn if they don't even know who your company is. They're less likely to click on your job post or to be searching for you to begin with. So college students especially they haven't spent a lot of time, as much as maybe you and I have, surveying the job market. They're gravitating toward just the biggest brands. And so we're learning that branding, contest challenges, other kind of social outreach is really important so that these students actually pay attention to the smaller brands. The second thing we're learning is that, students are a little bit cynical now. A lot of students, they haven't had a lot of guidance. And so some of them go to the Career Center, some of them don't. So this is the digital, generation that they never had to submit a paper resume, right? They just go on Indeed.com and Monster, and they just click apply 100 times. So some of the students are burnt out on that, because you and I both know that they're not getting the response rates that they wish they got. And then they're like, okay, I guess I'm never getting a job. So it's depressing. For some of these students, they don't know what to do.
Yeah. So,
I think the other thing to get past that cynicism, you and I have seen this over the last 5-10 years, a lot of the buzz term is candidate experience, and to get rid of that black hole in the ATS.
Yes.
But, it actually really matters, because when you send people through that gauntlet and they don't hear back, they get kind of demoralized, and then they almost take themselves out of the job market. And then they just go, we're hearing from students, well, I applied to 200 jobs, I get no responses, I guess I'm not going to get a job, I'll go live at home, or I'll take part-time jobs, or both. So that candidate experience really does matter. I've been doing this for 10, 11 years. I'll be totally honest with you, because I always thought, it's a bit of a buzzword. More than ever now that I'm involved in this entry-level hiring, I see why it matters and where the ROI is.
Yeah,
big time. So those are kind of our two big observations, at least.
Yeah. Do you hear them complain about LinkedIn, in terms of, hey, it's not really for students, or that kind of stuff? Any of those kind of sentiments from the students?
I think students are confused about LinkedIn. That we get more confusion than anything else, because it's become the default place to go, and everybody thinks, well, it's like you have to have a profile on LinkedIn, right? Like nobody would disagree with that. But then students are asking themselves, okay, but why, and what do I get for that? Like what's really in it for me? So we see some students creating the profiles, but then we don't see them staying engaged on LinkedIn. And I wrote a little piece about this once, and the top 3 reasons that we found when we actually surveyed the students in terms of why they don't stay engaged on LinkedIn. Number 1, LinkedIn is really like a Rolodex, right? It's how you and I keep contact with all our professional connections.
Yeah.
But, students don't have professional connections. So they don't have a Rolodex to maintain, so there's less value for them, right, to be there. Number 2, LinkedIn has done a nice job the last couple of years with their news feed, I think, but it's very much professional content, thought leadership content, advertisements for how to get more frequent flyers. Flyer miles. it's not
student
like
focused.
Gen Y millennial. Yeah. Absolutely not. No. So the news feed's not engaging. And then, the other thing is the profile itself. On a LinkedIn profile, you're basically uploading a resume. Now they have limited functionality to upload some attachments and projects, but it's truly first and foremost a resume database. And students just don't have great resumes yet. They haven't had the opportunity to get to accrue the experience to be able to show off a great resume. So for those 3 reasons, I think a lot of students get on LinkedIn, it becomes a dead end. They don't really see the value and they don't really engage. And I think one of the things that we're really proud of with Portfolium is it's a place that students feel comfortable, welcome. This is for them. It's a place where we're encouraging them to learn, show off their skills, and then rewarding them for it, because we're finding progressive employers who do want to take an evidence-based approach are realizing, well, look, if we pay attention to these students' work, it's good business because it'll help us make better hires faster. So that feedback loop is I think, making our students really stick and get excited about it, versus maybe it's a little harder for them to see the value of LinkedIn.
Gotcha. Good stuff, Jim. Well, I appreciate the time today. Last question. You just got some recent funding that I saw about in the news, so congrats on that. And what do you guys plan on doing with your new funds?
Well, we're really excited to take that funding, stay here in San Diego, America's finest city, self-proclaimed, but I couldn't agree more. We want to recruit the best talent from all over the world to come work with us at headquarters here in San Diego, and to help grow our sales team, marketing team, our software development team, our product team. So it's all about growing the talent. It's not ironic, right? It always is about talent. Sure. And then about going national. So we have national and international. So we have good coverage regionally in different places around the country in terms of our partnerships with universities and employers. And now it's about more offices, more feet on the street, more marketing to make sure everybody in all 50 states and beyond in the U.S., North America, soon internationally can know who we are and make use of our tools. So we'll use the funding to really spread the word and grow the business.
All right. Well, Jim Milton from Portfolium, thanks for joining me today. Feel free to give out your contact info.
All right. Jim@portfolium.com is my email address. You can email me directly. And then the Twitter handle is @PortfoliumHQ, @PortfoliumHQ. And my Twitter handle is @JKMilton. And Chris, thanks so much for the opportunity, and thanks to the listeners.
Yeah, no problem. We'll put all those links on the blog post when the show is out. That's going to do it for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Follow me on Twitter @ChrisRussell, or visit rectechmedia.com. You can find the audio and links for the show on our blog. Thanks for listening, everyone.